Raywat Deonandan, our go-to guy, epidemiologist, science communicator at the University of Ottawa. Good morning, Dr. Ray.
Good morning.
All right, first and foremost, is it a good move to partially lift in any way the restrictions on restaurants and gyms, in your opinions?
Wow, what a question to start with. Yeah, I think it probably is, with severe restrictions, with a lot of more public health deployment. I mean, a lot, including, enhanced contact tracing, maybe mandatory logs for entry, improved air circulation systems, and so forth. But yeah, I think we can start considering that soon.
Well, and then, so why did they have to close in the first place, if not just give them more opportunity to be safer? I mean, they would tell you, if you told us this 3 weeks ago, we would have done that.
Well, it takes more than 3 weeks. Since June, we should have been looking into making things safe, and that's why I'm a little frustrated.
Yeah.
We look at what things have happened in Asia, for example. They did everything right in places like Taiwan and South Korea. You take opportunities when cases are low to deploy enormous amounts of tracing and testing so that you can manage the situation on the ground. But we didn't do that, so that's why we're in the situation we're in now.
Were you surprised that gyms and restaurants were really accounted to so few cases?
Okay, so there's a lot going on there,
yeah.
And I'm going to be the wet blanket on you. First of all, these aren't cases; these are outbreaks.
Right.
2% of outbreaks, and that's one outbreak could be 100 cases. We don't know. Okay, that's first thing. Second, this is data from August, so we have 13 weeks of data. 4 of those weeks really are only when this relevant for gyms and 4 of those weeks the gyms and restaurants weren't open, so that's skewed already. Second, when they were open, that's when cases were very low prevalence in our community back in August. And then since the restrictions, the transmission rates have actually come down significantly. Right? Then also keep in mind that most of our cases are untraced. So this data only represents the confirmed sources that we know about. And that's a fragment of the total number of cases. So I don't put a lot of weight on this data, to be honest. It's not really compelling. I know it offers one narrative, and there's something resembling a statistical signal here, but there are other signals that I'd be quite wary about. So the proper scientific way to assess this data is to be very cautious about it because it tells one sliver of the story.
Well, incomplete, right?
Very incomplete.
That being said, was it irresponsible to roll it out the way they did yesterday and give this false sense of hope?
Yes, I think so. It needs more context for sure.
So that being said, the restaurant owners and the gym owners should not hang on to that optimism that something...
Oh, I think there's always room for optimism.
Okay.
Absolutely. And it is, again, one piece of the puzzle, and that one piece is in their favor, absolutely.
What are the other pieces that are missing?
The cases, not the outbreaks, the cases.
Okay.
Right? And then if we can trace the unknown transmission, that would be useful.
Okay.
And then data from the last few weeks. What happens in August really isn't that relevant. What happens in October is what matters.
Right.
And so looking around the world, too, like Germany has shut down all their bars and restaurants in anticipation of keeping schools open. So let's back up for a second. Our data suggests that schools and long-term care centers are the major sources.
I was going to get to that next, yeah.
Yeah, not surprising, surprising.
Does that worry you, that it's schools, daycares, long-term care homes where the bulk of these cases are? Or outbreaks, outbreaks.
It doesn't worry me because other stuff is closed, so of course it's got to be those. And also, we anticipated, long-term care centers, absolutely, that worries me. Absolutely, that should be 100% protected. That's a failure of our system that it's happening. Schools, it was always going to be the case.
Yeah.
And I assume that our societal goal here is to keep schools open to the best of our abilities, which means everything else is at risk. Everything else must be closed if that's the case. So that's the choice Germany's made.
Yeah. So, at what point do we say, okay, it's not working for the schools either? And go ahead.
I don't know what the metric would be. Some people suggest when the test positivity rate goes above 3% in your community, that's when you start considering closing schools. So we're almost there, we'll see.
Does it seem fair to tell a restaurant owner and gym owner we're going to put schools as priority here?
Yeah, I think it is fair. I mean, what is our hierarchy of value as a society? If it's not our children on top, I don't know how to rank things.
Yeah, couldn't we find a compromise and do both?
Yeah, I think so. And the compromise would be deploy enormous public health resources in the community, testing, tracing, isolation, like they do in South Korea and Taiwan, that we could be doing here too.
We keep hearing about flu season around the corner. We got to err on the side of caution as we start to talk about possible partial lifting of some of these restrictions, which would be huge for the restaurant sector and the gym sector. Are we setting ourselves up for failure 6 weeks from now?
Well, not necessarily. Again, I'm a ridiculous optimist. I keep expecting us to do, things properly. We never do. But if we do things properly, I think we can do it well. Well, flu season, we actually have a lighter flu season than normal because of the reasons we anticipated. People are distancing and wearing masks, and people are getting the flu shot, even though many people can't access it for some reason. But as the weather gets colder, then a number of things might happen. So if the weather gets really, really cold, then no one leaves their house ever, and that's good. That's good for pandemic control. If it gets, just cold enough that we don't want to be outside, but we want to be inside somewhere, like maybe not your house, but somebody else's house, well, that's that. So it depends on just how bad the weather gets.
I want to get your take on Halloween. A lot of, we've been told not to trick or treat. They're not going to give out tickets, but get creative. So there's the Easter egg hunt around the house. So you open up different doors inside your house with just your family. And then there are those organizers on those neighborhood blocks that say, I can do this, and let's get 20 families on board. We'll go from house to house to house. And isn't that the same as trick-or-treating, Doc?
Well, it is, but you can do it safely. Like, I'm in favor of going outside and getting dressed up and seeing your community and interacting with people at a safe distance. And if you can get people on board with going door to door at a distance, not going into people's houses and not touching each other, and maybe having vats of candy at the end of your driveway, or maybe not even having candy at all, just waving at the door, then we can do this. Absolutely. I mean, Halloween. The beauty of Halloween is a social event. It's not a sharing event necessarily.
Dr. Raywat Deonandan, I have the latest numbers that have just been tweeted out by the health minister. 896 cases for Ontario, 92 for Ottawa. Here's one of the factors, 41,000 tests. So that's a big number. They surpassed the 40,000 goal. So we got to take this all into consideration as we take a look at those numbers. But 92 for Ottawa, Doc.
Yeah. So, we're holding around that 100 level,
Well, we were at 50 in the 50s for a couple of days.
For a couple of days, yeah. It's tracking with the wastewater analysis, which I think is probably the best surveillance tool we have right now.
And what's it showing now?
It's showing, if I dial it up right now, it's dipped a bit. We had a couple of spikes, which might be artifactual, having to do with the way the sewage system works, but it's still high. However, it looks like it's trending downward, but it's hard to say. So a lot of this might just be a hangover from Thanksgiving still. People,
wow. The hangover from Thanksgiving. How can you explain it these many weeks later?
Well, because people got together and they gave it to other people,
right?
And now those other people are being tested.
So the incubation period sort of takes a little, add an extra person into a little more time before it kicks in.
That's right. And that initial spike might have been people coming into town for Thanksgiving and pooping into a water supply. Who knows? So anything's possible.
How do you feel about weddings? Do you see the one in Aurora? Like 46 family members, and they all live in different parts of the province. So they're spreading it everywhere potentially.
My feeling is this. They didn't break any rules. That's my understanding of it, which is the problem, right? So we're asking ourselves the wrong question. We're asking ourselves, is this against the rules, rather than, is this a good idea? So increasingly, it's being put upon the individual citizen to make rational choices because we cannot rely upon the government to set proper standards here. I would not go to a wedding. My family has canceled many weddings. My newborn baby didn't have a baby shower and doesn't see his family at all. So we're restraining ourselves. And even though we're allowed to do those things, and I think everyone should be thinking along those same lines, if the government won't set the proper limits, then you can voluntarily restrain yourselves from socializing.
Let me push back. For one or two that we hear about a month, there are many, many more. Should we really cripple that industry and possibly put people out of work in banquet halls because of 2 cases?
Yeah, it's a good point. Now, this is a super spreading disease.
Yeah,
right?
There you go.
And not all of them super spread. We cannot predict which environments will be the super spreading environment, but 1 or 2 will. So the only strategy we have is to take them all off the table. Now, that means the state has to step in again and make sure that the people losing their jobs are compensated. This is why we have tax dollars. This is why we have a state in the first place, is to protect those people being affected. So I'm fully in favor of the government stepping in and compensating people who are affected by this so that we can keep the entire province safe and reopen quicker than otherwise.
If you had your way, would you just shut everything down for a month?
No, I would not.
Okay. I want to know where your scale here is, because
no, I think we can actually use a surgical approach. We have the data for it. We have the tools. We just need the political will to do so. Now, if you want to go the elimination route, that takes a national effort, right? And the elimination route would be to shut down everything for 2 months and then seal the borders.
Right. If
we're not prepared to do that, the elimination route won't work.
Australia did that, didn't they?
They did, and New Zealand, and it's possible.
It's easier though when you're an island, for example, New Zealand. I mean,
it is easier, but it's not impossible.
Okay. Always good to talk to you. Got great information as usual. Dr. Ray Deonandan, epidemiologist, science communicator, and new dad from the University of Ottawa. Thanks, Dr. Ray.
Thank you.
Cheers.